Good evening, everyone, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Well, we're going to begin this show, of course, with the latest from Hurricane Harvey. Massive storm already dumped record-breaking amounts of rain on Texas, and now the flooding engulfing more and more neighborhoods. And as rescue operations continue, tens of thousands of people seeking emergency shelter. Let's go to Marcy Gonzalez live in Houston.
Hi, good evening. And new shelters are now opening, including this one, which can house 10,000 people. They are taking people in from one of the overcrowded shelters, as well as others who are just being rescued today.
Relentless downpours as Harvey moves northeast, now burying areas along the Texas-Louisiana border under fast-rising floodwaters. People and pets pulled to safety by first responders and selfless strangers back out in their own boats today, saving lives.
They'll just keep bringing boatloads of people out to the truck. We'll load them up and we'll get them out of the area.
And still more rescues back in hard-hit Houston. The sky is now clear here, but water is still inundating homes. An estimated 30% of this county, 1,700 square miles, now flooded.
People that are calling out, people have been stranded for days.
And with the water receding in some places, the death toll from this monstrous storm is climbing. Police finding the 6 family members who died when their van was swept away.
Our worst fears have been realized.
Today, evacuations in Port Arthur, Texas, at this nursing home where officials say patients waited in the water for 24 hours. And at this shelter.
Water is coming in from every angle. It's coming in from the bathroom, is coming in from the back door, the front door.
More than 32,000 people are now living in shelters in Texas. From this overcrowded convention center to churches and mosques, some are reaching capacity.
But there is still room at this shelter, and so many people are showing up here wanting to help. They've actually had to turn volunteers away. Live in Houston, Marcy Gonzalez, ABC News. Now back to you.
Thank you very much, Marcy. And earlier today, our senior political correspondent, Andrew Whitman, he spoke with Democratic Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy about the storm, the government's response, and other subjects as well.
Senator Murphy, let's begin with the response to Hurricane Harvey. What's your take on the administration and President Trump's response to the storm, as well as his proposed $1 billion in cuts to FEMA?
Well, I'm really proud of all the first responders who have been there. Connecticut has sent some of our finest, both volunteers and National Guard, to join in the recovery efforts. I think that we've got to come together here and come up with the money necessary to allow Texas and Houston in particular to respond and to heal. It was a political fight, unfortunately, to get the money for Sandy recovery. I wish that weren't the case, but we need to get people in Texas what they need, and I'm going to be ready and willing to work on that when Congress reconvenes next week.
Towards that end, the president wants emergency relief funding for Harvey, but he still has to get the budget done and has threatened a shutdown over wall funding. Are you at all concerned, given his threats to Senator Murkowski over health care, that he might say take it or leave it on the wall in the budget, and Harvey say either you vote for all of them together or we're not going to give you any Harvey funding?
The president's not that involved in the budget discussions that happen here. He just doesn't have the capacity to do that. He likes to send out tweets, but you know, it'll be adults in Congress that will try to figure out a path forward to fund Harvey response, the budget, and avoid a shutdown. I know the president got up in front of one of his rallies and said that he wanted to shut down the government. I don't think there's a lot of enthusiasm to do that from Republicans and Democrats in Congress. We don't tend to listen to him too much when he's out there in these campaign-style rallies. I hope that we'll get the job done, both for Texas and to avoid any shutdown.
I want to get your take on the pardon of Joe Arpaio. Our legal panel will be here to discuss some of the legal ramifications, but what do you think that the pardon sends as a message to America's Latino community? And also, does it send a message to Trump's associates who might find themselves under investigation in the Mueller-Russia probe?
Well, Arpaio's pardon is really inexcusable, and the fact that it comes so closely on the heels of the president's botched response to Charlottesville tells you all you need to know. I mean, this president is using the White House as a mechanism to protect people who engage in racist activity, racist speech. He's effectively a public relations office these days for some of the worst anti-Semitic, anti-African American efforts in this country. I wish he hadn't pardoned Arpaio, and I hope it's not a sign of things to come.
Want to shift now to mental health, and I know it's been a pet issue for you for a long time. You're the author of the Mental Health Reform Act, which was signed into law by President Obama in December. It makes it easier for people to get access to mental health professionals and makes mental health care more like access would be to medical care. I know you have some concerns and expressed some concerns during the discussions over health care about the future of Medicaid. How does Medicaid impact mental health care in this country?
Well, Medicaid is the biggest payer for mental health care in the country. And even if you aren't on Medicaid, it affects you because if the president was to get what he wants, hundreds of billions of dollars in cuts to Medicaid, the result would be that clinics all over the country would close down. Maybe your clinic accepts your private insurance payment for your mental health care, but if they don't get Medicaid, then they can't keep their doors open. So if the president gets his wish, these huge, giant, devastating cuts to Medicaid, then you will see psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers close up shop all over the country. That'll be terrible for everyone, every family who's struggling with mental illness.
You know, access to mental health care is a major hurdle, but there's also a lingering stigma to mental health care as well as to drug treatment, if you will. Is there any way that we can help Americans overcome the stigma that might be associated with mental health? And does government have a role in lowering those stigmas?
The stigma that still surrounds mental health and mental illness, it comes directly from the industry. The healthcare industry treats mental health differently. It set up a whole system of care to treat your brain that are housed in different buildings than the system of care to treat the rest of your body. Insurance companies put you through all sorts of bureaucracy and red tape to get reimbursed for mental health care that they don't if you're getting treatment for a broken leg or for cancer or for heart disease. Our bill that passed last year starts to require the insurance companies to take down that bureaucratic red tape that stops people from getting mental health care. And in doing so, it will also help to erase the stigma about mental illness that's created in part by how differently the insurance industry treats people who have mental illness than they treat people who have other diseases.
Finally, Senator, the Education Department just named a former dean at DeVry University as the person responsible for stopping fraud in higher education. DeVry itself just settled a $100 million fraud case. I know you've reacted strongly online and on social media. Your thoughts on that appointment of the former DeVry dean?
Higher education has become big business. Wall Street investors, hedge funds, they now own and control colleges. And many of these for-profit colleges, like DeVry, they're not out to educate people. They're out to make a buck. They're out to take Pell Grants and Stafford loans and turn it into huge investor returns. The fact that the Trump administration has chosen someone who used to work for one of the biggest higher education funding scofflaws to be the new policeman on the beat tells you all you need to know. I'm very worried the Department of Education is just becoming a pass-through for taxpayer dollars to go to big for-profit colleges, to for-profit education companies that run elementary schools, turning our schools into another source of profit for millionaires and billionaires. That's a terrible thing for this country. And the appointment of this former DeVry executive tells you that the administration really doesn't seem to care much about for-profit college scammers, seems to care more about making sure that the money keeps on flowing to these for-profit college and elementary school companies.
Senator Chris Murphy, Democrat from the state of Connecticut. Thank you for a few minutes, Senator.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And coming up next, the legal storm. From price gouging to insurance issues, Hurricane Harvey opening up a whole lot of questions. Our panel of attorneys will join us on that, as well as a whole lot more.